So what do you have in mind as far as like intro and stuff like that?
Shit, I don't know.
It's weird. So what do you want to talk about?
What do we talk about? What do we normally talk about? This is the first time we've actually sat down to record it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I definitely think that it would be a good idea to talk about what some of our predictions are with the new ban list. Like because I know they're breaking out like, what is it, the tiers or brackets? Or
I think it's the brackets. I know Play to Win's called it buckets.
Buckets, yeah.
Like whatever they're gonna go with.
Honestly, man, I don't know. Like I would love this to become something to where we can get, like, if we get to a point to where we're able to put up like a gameplay video a week.
Right. No, and I agree with that. I think as long as we are trying to make those efforts to be able to like put out, like you were saying, podcast episode once a week, gameplay video at least once a week. I really can't think of anything outside of that. I think that that's where I'm just like, what can we do differently? I think not just the release time on things, but I feel like one thing that's like I find important is like being able to build the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that was like one of the big things as far as like even in our local meta, like, hey, let's get more people involved here. And so just being able to build that up, not just locally or within this region, but now that we're taking it to this level and doing the videos too, I think that's probably like a key point that I want to make sure that we're doing too.
This is one thing that I did have an idea for, and I wanted to at least like run this by you. You know how, so when we get a new set, Play to Win will look at a couple of commanders that they think could be cEDH viable. They'll build a deck around it. What I think would be really cool is if we kind of did something similar to their videos where new set comes out, we take a commander from like each of those sets, like we just kind of pick something, and then we play it against each other, and then the winner of that, we play it into like a meta, like a meta pod. So it's like you have your Timnacrom or like your Timnathras, and you have your any other deck,
right?
And then it's like, okay, it won out amongst all the other commanders. Then so like, you know how you were saying multiple games in the same thing. It's like, okay, it won the first game. Now let's see how it fares in like the actual meta.
Almost kind of doing like a gauntlet match,
kind of
thing with it. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. Like, and I think that I agree with you. I think that'd be something that'd be unique to do, because like not just them, but I feel like a lot of other places they kind of do the same thing. Whether it be that it's like, oh, these commanders from this set look really good, or even with just the pre-constructed decks.
Yeah.
Sometimes too, because maybe I'm kind of backtracking a little bit and going back to the local meta thing. That seems to be a big area for here too, and I would assume the same for everywhere else, is just like, really focused on the budget side of things and the pre-con tournaments or whatever it is, especially since brought up the brackets, buckets, whatever that might be. and like, it might not be a bad thing taking that same concept and doing it with those two, because I think that's an area where a lot of people get drawn into the format to begin with.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how it would go about doing like a gauntlet match, and then would it be against other pre-cons whenever it comes to that stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I guess it's just going to take us trying to figure out and then getting suggestions from everyone else, see what happens.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one other thing too that I thought would be really cool, so like one of the ways that I came up with the idea of like casting cost whenever I originally came up with it, I used to have like budget series that I would make, where it'd be like, oh, you have to build this deck. It had to be under $50, and no card in the deck could be over $5, and that was a budget thing that I used to do. But I think it would be this could be something to where it could be like a good step to help people get into cEDH, where it's, you can't necessarily afford a deck, and you have people that are just kind of sticklers on like proxies, I guess. We could show them potentially how to build a deck that would be close to cEDH, if not still like cEDH, but just on a much lower budget.
No, I kind of agree with that. I feel like it'd be a good thing to do, especially, well, I mean, kind of going casting costs. Like, whenever like I saw the name, my first like reaction to it was like, I feel like there's going to be something financial involved with it. So like whether it be like, you know, doing videos to showcase like either more budgeted stuff, or whether that be like for a budget tournament or the bracket bucket, whatever system they're going to do, that's probably going to end up turning into some kind of budget thing within itself. Alternative like cards that people can use. There's a lot of people in our community right now that are playing in those, the budget leagues or the pre-cons, and they have pretty extensive knowledge on like, well, I might not be able to afford this card, but you can run this in its place. So I think being able to do that kind of fulfills like a niche in a way, especially like you're saying, like that is probably the best way of getting people into the format, is starting there and then branching from that. And obviously we can do like budget videos as far as like gameplay and things like that too.
Well, and again, like I think that it's I think because most places anyway are going to be proxy friendly, which I think is totally fine. But I think just having like a stepping off point, like you don't want to just immediately dive headfirst and be like, I dropped $6,000, unless you're the crazy dude at the shop.
Me.
Well, it's like the dude that like bought the Atraxa deck. He literally bought a pre-con, and then within 2 days, somebody had it into like a cEDH Atraxa deck. I think it was Josh that was helping him. Like he literally bought a pre-con, and then Josh goes, "Oh, you should make some edits to that pre-con," and it was like an Azorius pre-con. And then the guy goes, "What do you have in mind?" And then the next day, the dude comes in, and it is an Atraxa cEDH deck, and he literally spent like $4,000 in 1 day on it. It was insane.
No, we can't be having that.
No, exactly. So
like, let's be reasonable.
Yeah. So I think it would be good to get somebody like how Travis has like the budgety like Krinko deck.
Yeah.
Or even some of the guys that play like the budget Magda lists. Like those lists do really, really well. And I feel like if you're playing against 4 people, like if it's 4 people, the skill level is all very similar, then there's obviously an aspect of luck to it, but you're going to want to have the best card quality available. But if you're just getting into it and it's like a local thing and you're just kind of dabbling, you can get away with like, if you're skilled enough, you can figure out the rest from there. Like you may not have a dual land, but that's okay. Like you can play like one of the surveil lands or something and still, or one of the what is it, the shock lands.
Yeah, like as far as fetchable things, like outside the original like OG lands, you have your shocks, and now all the surveil lands. I guess you have the triomes too.
Yeah.
Depending on if you're able to go that route based on what you're trying to build. Yeah. But there's always options. Yeah. And I think that even within cEDH, sometimes there's kind of that misconception. I there's been numerous times I feel like I've even sat down at a table and like, even if there are more casual players sitting next to us, and their main argument is, well, you basically pay to win, and that's not always the case. No. So being able to take some of our content and even like trying to break some of that misconception, I think is a good direction too.
Yeah, I would love to be able to get more people into the game. I feel like one of the issues that cEDH just had, we were on a really good growth. Like we were moving in a great direction.
Yeah.
I mean, we had really good assets with Top Deck. We had the EDH Top 16. We were having tournaments all over the place. And then out of nowhere, like the rules committee bans came out. Top Deck tried to do their own little ban list before that. And then people started getting like all sorts of insults, and then they ended up selling Top Deck to a different group of people. So then
I think there may have been a few other things that were going on behind the scenes though for that.
There was just a lot of stuff going on with that. And then EDH Top 16, I felt like they had a good system going with like the way that they could track games, and you saw what commanders were doing really, really well, and there was ways for you to look at a lot of different things. And all of a sudden it was almost like it dumbed itself down. It's weird. Like it looks better like aesthetically, but functionally it operates like way worse in my opinion. And a lot of people share that sentiment. Like it's hard to, I almost feel like it's hard to discover new commanders now, because used to, you could go on that intro page and it would just show you like the top 100 performing commanders in cEDH, even if there was one that had like a really bad conversion rate, but it had maybe been in a few decks, like a, it slipped in like a Yannette, how Ian just won a tournament, or I think he top 4 to tournament with it. Like you would just see that and somebody would be like, oh wow, and they discovered a new cEDH commander. Now it's just a wall of like 12 of the best things. And then if you want to find something new, you have to go and like search it. You have to know what you're looking for.
It's all like Tymna X at the top.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about then too, because that, either trying to break some of that misconception, or like make it to where people are able to play what they actually want to play. You don't have to run Tymna Thrasios. You don't have to run Tymna Crom. You don't have to do Rogsai. Like you don't have to do these decks whenever the game has been out for over 30 years and there's other options.
I think it would be really good to also find a way to get people into the right communities that they're probably looking for, because even someone like Brandon's probably a good example, but he is playing Rogsai, and I honestly feel like he could find a good Discord or some good YouTuber or tool to help him learn the deck, help him get better with it. And honestly, if there aren't good resources out there like that, then maybe we can be somewhat of a resource for that. Like we could have a series potentially where we teach people how certain decks win. Like you could literally look at the deck, you sit down and you say, these are your main win conditions. And then you're just kind of teaching people like how the deck wins, what the deck does. And then that way people can kind of just look at it and go, oh, I really like the way that operates. That's cool. It's not the typical, we'll say, Thassa's Oracle package. I would rather play this thing. And then boom. Or, somebody's playing, they see a Tali, but then they look at it and they just don't know how it wins. Or a deck that I play like Sithis. If you looked at that list.
Or Flubs.
You look at that list and you're just sitting there and you can get caught staring at it for a minute and be like, how does this win?
Right.
But, there are options and you can kind of figure it out. You show people, and then from there, it's up to them to take the list, pick it up, learn it. But maybe we can get people into the game, and I think that alone would help diversify some of the decks you're seeing, because I think somebody just coming in from a more casual setting, they're not going to want to instantly pick up Tymna Thras. They're going to want to probably play something like a Glarb, or
not as meta.
Yeah, maybe. Something different. Yeah.
No, and I think that'd be pretty cool, because like, me personally, I know I've had like some wanting to dabble in coaching a little bit. And I think that, like even thinking of events I've been to this past year, like I can remember sitting at or either me actively sitting at tables in the game, or like spectating different games and going, they have the deck, but they're not really sure what to do with it. This last event I went to right before the year ended up in Louisville, there was a dude playing Sisay, and I was sitting there and watching, especially since I played that deck for the past year, and it's just like, I can't tell what you're doing because it doesn't look like what most pilots do. And I think that might be an area where I think a lot of us assume that people that play these decks like know exactly what you're doing. So maybe trying to fill this spot and sitting down with someone and either going through their deck and seeing what lines they want to play, or if there's a line they're struggling with, like you're talking about, like the breach lines. Like even I at first, whenever I was playing Blue Farm, not this last year, but the year before last, like there were times I was just like, I have a bunch of cards and I don't know how to win from here.
Yeah.
So I think being able to sit down and then explain some of that stuff where it's outside of just gameplay content is probably a really beneficial thing.
Well, there's times where, like I said, I'll look at a list and it takes me a minute to figure out what the deck's doing. But a good example, like recently I was building Master of Keys because I love Esper decks.
Right.
But I wanted to stay in that shell, but I wanted something just a little different because I play a ton of Zer, and I was like, I need something else in case I just get a little burnt out. And I love Sithis, but I still like Esper. So I was looking at the list, some of the ones that had done really, really well, and I was just kind of staring at it like I see the Thassa's Oracle package. So I'm like, okay, infinite mana, mill yourself out. But what if you can't do that? But again, if I just pick the deck up because somebody was like, hey, play this, it's really good, and I pick it up and I have no clue what I'm looking at, I'm not going to do well with the deck. Like, I get the Thassa's Oracle stuff, but some people do get, we have people that we play with that get very tunnel visioned on, I should tutor for a Thoracle piece right now.
Right.
And sometimes it's not the time to do that. Sometimes you need to go get a Force of Will. Sometimes you should go get a wheel or go get anything else. Like, you should go get, something that may not seem obvious. So I do think that there could be a use case for us teaching people what the deck does, how it wins, and then obviously there's going to be more nuanced stuff of like when to use counters, when to go for value pieces, how to mulligan, things like that. And maybe we can cover some of that stuff at like a different point. I think we could be a good resource for showing people how to get into cEDH. That way we can try to, again, grow the community. I don't want to just be the elitist that's like, you keep playing casual, that sucks. Like,
right.
Like, we don't need rule 0 over here because we're, I hate when people.
Right. No, and I agree with that. And not to take anything away from what you just said, but it did give me the idea. And I feel like we've actually talked about this before. But then there's the polar opposite of that as far as gameplay content, where like maybe we do that concept where almost like I've always used to like basically like Dirty Santa, but I think people say like White Elephant or things like that.
Yeah.
I feel old now saying things like that. People these days. But like, being able to construct decks and then doing a White Elephant style gameplay where we don't know what we're going into.
Yeah.
And we play blindly, maybe get like a minute to look through the deck or something like that, just to see what happens.
Yeah.
And even going back to like whether this is going to be popular decks, off meta decks, something that people just have never seen before.
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of fun to do too.
Honestly, I would be totally fine with that, where we just, that's a hilarious idea, but literally we could line up 10 decks or whatever. You've got them lined up. They're all, we'll throw them in some white deck boxes.
Brandon has them all prepped for us.
Yeah. And then we'll say, grab a deck. And then, we've mixed them up. We have no idea what it is. And then you grab a deck and that's what you're playing. And if you open it up and it's, it's something that you play a lot, then cool, you got lucky. And if you open it up and it's, like I said, like Thalia Gitrog, I have no clue how to operate that deck.
What would you not want to play?
What would I not want to play?
In a situation like that.
Oh man, what deck would I not want to play in a situation like that? Man, I feel like I could get by with a lot of stuff. Like if I just looked through the deck real quick, I could figure it out. I think what would be a deck I would not want to play like that? Probably Magda.
Magda?
I would be so lost. I would be like, Dork Pass. Just what are they have? Their little, like their little 1-drops. What do they call them?
The dwarves?
Yeah, but don't they call it there's not a name for it that they say?
Oh, dude, I have no idea. I've never played that deck.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. I would stare at the deck and I'd be like, I have no idea how this wins. And the Magda pilers are so dedicated. They like know the math. They're like, I need this many treasures. I got to do this. And it would just be bad. I'd just like go get Portal Type Phyrexia and try to kill people with combat damage.
Dude, I play flubs and that would hurt my brain trying to play Magda. I feel like I'm kind of the same boat with that deck. Like, I think it'd be kind of fun. And I feel like it's almost positioned okay right now. Like, it's pretty good. But yeah, I feel like Magda would be one I would probably stay away from because I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Yep. And I'm just going to prolong the game until I figure it out. And we're going to be sitting here for like 2 hours.
Yeah. Maybe even like a colorless, like Eldrazi deck, the one that did really good in a tournament. Did you see that? It was like a colorless deck that took down a cEDH tournament. It was literally just, I forget which.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It was crazy. But there was like, the whole thing was, there were loops with like Sensei's Top and some other goofy stuff, and then you would just like cast it off the top of your deck and draw cards, and you just fill your hand up.
Yeah.
And then there were ways to like get infinite mana, and then you would cast like an X cost spell that would just kill everybody. Like, it was something crazy, but it ended up winning a tournament.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I just can't think of I'll find the deck, but it was something just bananas. It was crazy.
It probably wasn't like the Urza's No, you're talking about Eldrazi. There was a deck a while back, like the Urza's Battlethopter.
Oh, Liberator.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
like,
no. The only reason
that was a while back though.
Yeah. The only reason I know that card is because it's a flash enable. In-step Necro, baby.
Yeah, but now we have Valley Floodcaller, which is.
I don't even run that. What? How do I win with it? Because like the only way that I could think that I would win with that is I would have to. I really don't know. I would basically have to play something like Beseech the Mirror, and I could do that to get Thoracle straight onto the battlefield and then cast Consult. But if I also have Valley and Thoracle in hand, the only way I can flash her out is with like some Born or Emergent Zone. And I'm not a Crop Rot deck because I don't run green.
I think that's for a different day. We might have to figure that one out.
Just saying. Now, I could technically, if I was running like Brain Freeze and LED, I could technically, I could Praetor's Grasp somebody's Breach. But even then, when I crack the LED, I discard my hand. So I'm going to have to, thankfully I would have Flash so I could respond to my Necro triggers and I could keep casting stuff from the graveyard. Yeah, never mind. There's ways, I'm sure.
There's ways.
Yeah.
Zur gets there. Zur gets the that was an important piece of information. I think we're talking that you play Zur. We got off the subject of what we would not want to play in the White Elephant, and we went straight to our decks.
I don't think Zur gets there. I think Necropotence just gets there.
Oh God, Necropotence. Yeah. Every single time I see you play that card and to hit the table, I'm just like, he wins. You stole Brandon's last night, and I was like, he wins because so-and-so is going to mess with my stuff.
Well, what killed me was the fact that Brandon necroed for a bunch, and then he like was sculpting a perfect 7, and I had already like before we even let him sculpt his hand, I had done it, and then I literally took the card back and I said, let's hope he has a short-term memory, and then I'd watch him pitch a Force of Will, pitch a Pyroblast, pitch all this stuff, and I'm like, and then whenever he does, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do it, and he goes, are you serious? And I was like, did you not see me do it 3 seconds ago? That was so good. I posted that in the Zur Discord, and everybody was so happy.
I wish I would have never told you to put Steel Enchantment into your deck.
It's so good. It's beautiful. It's like the best card. Resource denial. Baby.
And that's all I play is like nothing but resources for the most part.
Yeah.
Aside from that, let's look at some of our goals for just us. Like, what do we want to do for the 2025 year in cEDH?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, as far as, let's get, I guess, kind of we could start here. Like, what kind of events do you want to play in? I know last year, like, we went down to the event down in Nashville. You went to Play to Win's event up in Pennsylvania. You had a ton of fun with that. So, like, what do you want to try to do as far as, like, trying to get out there and play and, like, things like that?
Yeah. I would honestly love it if we could go. I would like to go back to Nashville. I hope that shop's still there. I hate that what happened to them, but.
Well, that wasn't the same shop.
Was it?
We went to a different shop. Yeah, we went to Arcane Workshop, and the one that got broken into was Game Cave.
Really?
Yeah. We went there, and I bought stuff, and then the next day they got broken into, and it's not related whatsoever.
I do think that it would be cool to go back to Nashville and probably play in some tournaments there, and that was a really good competitive meta. Like, I felt like those guys, most of the people we saw were very competent players. They were really competitive. Everybody was pretty cool that I met. Now, they were serious during the games, but afterwards, like, they were super cool. And I also like the fact that people were willing to travel to that area.
Right.
I think Nashville just attracts people like that anyway, but I think that was cool. I think that it would be nice to, honestly, I would love to try and grow our meta. I really want to talk Hobbytown into getting bigger events hosted there, because I know like even places like Henderson, Kentucky, and some of those, they're starting to get bigger through the decades. It's starting to grow and have more tournaments. I would love it if we could potentially talk Blake and them into actually getting bigger tournaments hosted there.
Right.
Allowing more proxies on top of that, because even though I know like they want to put a limit on it, because you do want to encourage people to buy cards, but at the same time, you may get somebody that is totally proxy. Like they're not there to buy cEDH stuff, but they may buy stuff for their casual decks. They may buy deck boxes. They may buy dice. They may buy, like sleeves. They may buy like mats, whatever. They may buy something that's not even related to Magic. They may buy like a different set. You're going to get the entry fee for them coming in, or they bring their friend. Like, let's say I'm 100% proxy, or like Jacob's a good example. My buddy Jacob, he's 100% proxy. And even the guy that's in, he plays Diada and the Mardu Diada. And the guy that literally is like the best pilot in there, like the one that's the most accomplished in their Discord for Diada, he's 100% proxy. He literally will go and take down tournaments, and it's a 100% proxy deck. But like Jacob will find a tournament, take me to it, and then I'll go in there and spend money. So it may, or maybe you'll come along with us and then you'll go in there and spend money. So it's not even necessarily that person won't spend money. Like they may not, but then they'll drag along 2, 3, 4 people that will spend money. So I think that we can kind of encourage them to open up, be a little more proxy friendly, try to get some more people in the door. I would love it if we actually went and traveled somewhere to a pretty decent tournament. Like we went to Pennsylvania, and that was really fun going to Play to Win's tournament. And I mean, I had a great time there. I would love it if like we could get a group of us together. Maybe we can go get like an Airbnb. We'll just like split something, and then we can go to the tournament. We'll all enter, and then we'll have a good little like tournament report that we can do from that, which would be cool. And on top of that, we'll be able to see something different, because the meta from like this side of like the U.S. versus the West Coast, it's very different too. Like I've got friends that I talk to that live in Utah. Their meta is way different than the meta that we see over here.
Really?
Yeah, like over here, Timna Thras is like really, really common. Over there, Timna Crom is still very, very common. And just again, like little card choices. Even, I mean, you see, I'm sure like when Lamora's cards, when they do breakdowns, the Japan meta, it's starting to all become more similar, but like the European meta, the Japanese meta, all these different metas are pretty different. So I think it would be cool just to get different feels for stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and I think that'd be cool. I think kind of going back to a couple things you were saying, like, you were talking about the proxy thing. I think maybe not in this one, but whenever we are talking about more of like the predictions and like what's to come from the fallout and then Wizards taking over, I think that's going to give us a little bit more insight as to what the proxy situation is going to be. Because like, I know even like, for example, when we went through the decades up in Louisville, one of the things they talked about was it wasn't so much of a Wizards thing. I think it was because the system that they use for reporting, they were talking about in their agreements for that, they had to agree to not allow proxies.
Really?
So it might not even that, even that might not necessarily be just a Wizards thing, but they didn't use a system like Top Deck does. I think they were using like Eminence or something like that, where I think they had to do that agreement. But I think that we can kind of get into that one later. But as far as like being able to travel and things like that, like it kind of surprises me that there's not more in this area. So being able to find something here, whether that is trying to talk more with hobby and seeing if, us within our local meta being able to organize some of these like higher end events where people are coming out. Because like you were saying, like in Nashville, it wasn't just like the quality of the player base there. There were people coming from like Georgia and Alabama and like northern parts of Kentucky throughout that, and then us, obviously. I think even through the decades, like people were hyping up like going out to like Cincinnati and areas like that. I've seen on just like topdeck.gg where like there's a lot of like higher end events, like I think in like Stone Mountain, Georgia, I think is where it's at. So I think that's about right where like Chattanooga is, like right as you cross into the border. So I mean, those things are like what, 3-4 hours away, like especially if we went farther south like that, or we went into Cincinnati. Makes me wonder like what could be in Missouri, like I don't know. And I think like maybe even being able to travel to those, and like you're starting to say there towards the end, like the different types of meta, like even if we have a lot of TNT in this region, maybe if we push it a little bit more west or south, it changes on us a little bit. So
yeah,
I think that'd be pretty cool. Also I kind of want to contact the dude from through the decades and see if he would be interested in opening another store here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've thought about that one for a little bit. I don't know if he would or not, but that place is big enough that I could see them expanding. Yeah. And I think Bowling Green would be probably a good area for that.
If it gets to be something to where we can actually do something like this, especially regularly, I think it'd be awesome to be able to, go and be able to get other people involved into the game, whether it's like youth or other people, people that wouldn't have the opportunity to get into it otherwise, like kids that may not have the finances to get into it, or even adults that don't really have like a bunch of spare finances, being able to help them by like giving them a starter commander deck. And even if they don't get into cEDH, like we get them into commander, and then maybe eventually down the road they come into this this thing. But I think that stuff like that would just be awesome to help the community and help draw people to it. Like the more people that get into this space and eventually get into cEDH, the more brains you have working on all these decks and doing all this stuff. I mean, the faster that this is going to grow, the more opportunities we're going to have to play and get better. Because you can relate to this, but if you're coming from like a 1v1, like a 1v1 format, or you're coming from a more casual side of it, there is a learning curve when getting into Commander. There's more people at the table. There's more there is politics. Like you've got to figure out like what you're doing. Understanding again, like mulligans. Like there's times where I've played casual games and I go down to keep a 4, and they just look at you like you're a lunatic. I mean, they're like, "What are you doing?" And it's like, "Oh, this hand's great." And then all of a sudden, like you're jamming at that point. But people don't understand that when it comes to like there is that curve. So anything we can do to help speed that process up of like helping people get from outside of the cEDH bubble to inside, and like in the cEDH bubble integrated, like I don't think integrated is the word I'm looking for, but like get them, maybe it is integrated, like just get them integrated into this format so that they're understanding what they need to be doing, like how to play, you know what I mean? Just getting them into the format and helping them get to be good players as quick as possible. Like understanding like, hey, this is what you should do if you see, there's a heuristic study on board, be responsible. If there's a fish on board, be patient. If there's, if somebody's going for a win, politic a little bit, figure out, what you can do, things like that. Because again, I think at the end of the day, the quicker we can help people get better at the game, the quicker they have a good experience with the game. Nobody likes sitting down and then you just get whooped turn 2 3 games in a row, then you're like, I'm done with this. But but if you actually sit down and it's everybody's responsible and they're good, I mean, you saw there were games where it felt like we were taking forever, and then we sat down and looked and we're 4 turns into the game, and it's like, oh my god. And it's because everybody's thinking, they're being smart, they're doing what they need to. Like our games with like Cole and then like they take forever, because everybody's like, it's like
surprise. No, I get that. Like, and I think that happens as the skill level of everyone begins to like increase. Like, I think that's something that's naturally going to happen within the cEDH games, because like I think that's, and kind of go back to what we talked about earlier on the misconceptions, like people going, oh, it's like a turn 2 format, those games don't last long enough. Well, sometimes turn 2, that's 30 minutes into a game, depending on where you're at. Or it can be, at least, unless you're sitting with Rogside that goes turn and is sitting seat 1. That was miserable whenever I went through the decades, but it's kind of fun to see. But no, like, and I guess kind of going back to the personal goal stuff, like I think, being able to take some of this and like, I don't know if I will necessarily get into the coaching necessarily like this year, but starting to lead more and more into that direction, I think would be cool. And I think like another end of it is, and I think that this is for me as well, like you were talking about that learning curve. And I feel like even though I've been playing for a very long time, and then I understand like a lot of the stuff in the cEDH, like I don't really understand where my own deficits in the game are. and that's something that I need to focus on for me more so this year is like, okay, where are my areas where I'm like super lacking? Like this past year, my focus was more on I want to make sure that I have all my pieces that I have, whether that's the rocks or the lands or things like that. So that way I can play whatever I want. I'm not gonna worry about proxies. And then once I get all that, now I could sit down and figure it all out. And for this year, I think it's going to be part of that learning curve, but it's going to be more of like, where is it that I need to put my focus into? Because this is an area of my game that I really lack in right now.
Yeah, no, I get that.
If this is going to be kind of like a homegrown kind of thing, like it should be something where the people that do come to us, and whether that is the coaching or for the enjoyment or the whatever it might be, or just to see the downfall of it, like they're getting something out of it and they see where their money is actually, like if we do the Patreon and things like that, they're actually seeing what it's being put towards. And then having their input on things too. I know we in talking earlier on like what kind of games we want to do or how we want the channel to go, but I want to see like a lot of input from people, like whether it is our local community or online, whoever may be watching. I want to know what they want to see, because I do think that even though a lot of people are putting stuff out there, sometimes it all kind of gets jumbled up and it's the same stuff. And that, I think that would be a good thing as far as the community involvement being like, okay, you have more of a direct input on what we are doing here.
If there is something lacking somewhere, maybe we don't see it right now, but maybe we look and people go, hey, we would love to see this. Maybe it's another resource on literally, like I said, whatever. It's a clear, concise coaching thing. Great. Boom. We'll be able to do that. Or, hey, it's, you see all these people with courses. It's like, hey, I just want a course, something I could literally follow. And by the time I get to the end of it, I've got a good grasp, like a beginner's grasp on cEDH. It's like, boom, okay, we can throw that together. And then, oh, hey, I would love breakdowns on these decks, like, or certain situations, like how to politic,
right.
Because a lot of times even I feel like you hear people try to put a video together of like how to politic in cEDH. And then the moment they get to talking about politicking, they don't actually discuss politicking. And then you really didn't learn how to politic. You learned what it was, but you didn't learn how to do it. Because I used to have people all the time that would tell me like, oh, you got to politic in the game. And then I'd be like, well, how do you do that? And like, use your words. And I'm like, okay, cool. But like, yeah. So then I'm sitting there.
Do things.
Yeah.
You do this. You do this.
Yes. Do you have any other goals or anything that you're hoping?
As far as like personal goals, I don't really feel like I have much else other than that. Like I know like deck construction wise, like I said earlier, like last year I focused on trying to get everything that I could together so that way I can play whatever I either want to or what I feel is going to be best going into a tournament setting. I think that my only other goal is just figure out where cEDH is, because that's the deck I actually want to play. I don't want to play TNT. I don't want to play Blue Farm. I don't want to play Roxai. I might play Flubs. I might take, actually that might be a personal goal. I might take Flubs to a tournament.
There you go.
And see what happens with it. But that is the deck I kind of fell in love with, and that's where I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this. A lot of people are trying to figure it out. And I think that the core group of people have figured it out. But cEDH is going to be one of those decks. It's always going to get better. They're not just going to stop printing legendary cards. Every set's going to have it, and so on, and so on, and so on. We don't know what it's going to be like, but cEDH is going to be one of those decks where something might slot into the place that where Marvin and Iorith are right now. It might either make a better combo line or just works better synergistically with the deck. That line is fine. It's just a few extra steps is what it feels like. And that deck just, when you're having to add more and more steps like that, I feel like it gets you behind in the game.
Is there any card, this is kind of random, besides Dockside, obviously, is there any card that you could see getting unbanned that would have the biggest, like what card getting unbanned would have the biggest impact on cEDH, you think?
Without knowing what the ban list looks like off the top of my head, I think J-Lo.
Oh, okay.
Because that allows for a more, I don't know if fluid is the right word, play pattern with cEDH, but I mean, you can kind of sandbag on cEDH and then build up your board presence or protect your board presence enough to where, oh, I have a Jeweled Lotus, I'm going to cast it and I'm going to sack it and have the 3 mana right away to cast cEDH, and now I have all this available resource that I'm just going to dump into activations. You know, I think that was probably the biggest one over something like a Mana Crypt, and besides Dockside, obviously. But other than that, you know, that's kind of my biggest thing I think right now is just figuring out where I am on the deck. Like I'm just kind of like on the fence about it still, and that's the part that sucks. What about you? Like, do you have any other goals? Like,
oh yeah, bro. I think my biggest thing is that I just want to. I really would love to top 16 an event with Xur. That would be like a personal goal. And I think the biggest reason for that is like I've obviously put a ton of effort into getting better with that deck. And I can literally see my progress from when I started playing to now, where, you know, nothing against the people I was playing with, but when I first started playing the deck, I was playing against people that weren't as good in cEDH. And so I would sometimes I was winning a lot, and then I went to a tournament and just got destroyed, and I was like, oh, these guys are really good. I'm not as good as I think I am. And that was kind of when I had that first realization. And then I kind of hit that, I mean, you talked about it, but I kind of hit that diverging path of like, do I want to pick something that's more meta efficient, or do I want to stick with Xur? And I think that was a good, I think I made the right call, because me and you talked about it. You were like, well, you could try Blue Farm. And I think that Blue Farm obviously is, I think objectively it's better than Xur, you know, but at the end of the day, I think by making myself stick with Xur, I have understood the deck better, and I'm starting to understand what is important in cEDH. Like, again, understanding politics, not thinking, oh, I've got to throw 20 counter spells in my deck and just be like, oh, that's what I am. I'm just going to counter everybody, or I'm going to, you know, just try and just slam Xur down as fast as possible and necro, and then end up not getting there and then die. Like now I'm playing much more reserved, taking my time, truly embracing the mid range and the mid, like that middle gameness of it. Understanding that like I'm not necessarily playing Xur. I'm playing an Esper control shell in a mid range setting, and Xur just happens to be my commander. So I have a couple combos I can put around him, but the goal isn't Xur. Like I'm not. He's just he's a plan, but he's not the plan. Kind of like Timna decks. Like Timna's not the plan. She is just a option for the deck. So it's one of those things where I'm getting better at understanding what cEDH actually wants of you, getting better at piloting these decks, which is making me a better player slowly but surely. And so I'm hoping that over time that's going to lead to better outcomes when it comes to actually like trying to win tournaments and, you know, just going from there. I'm hoping I would love to top four. Well, I would love to top four. But I would love to top 16 an event with Xur. And even if I made it to top 16 and I lost in the first round, I would at least be able to be like, hey, I did good. Because then I'll be able to go on some video and they'll be like, hey, we're going to review this deck. And I'll be like, that's me.
Ian talked about me.
Yeah. Hey, Play to Win already talked about me. I'm good. Now I just got to get Ian to talk about me.
Did they talk about you? I think they more so talked about the Bowmaster of that game.
Did they? I don't know. They were like, because again, remember, best enchantments, I got brought up in the enchantment talk.
Okay.
Remember, he said Ristic Studies. That's me. It wasn't a good outcome. I treated my Ristic Studies like it was a Necropotent. So he was like, I have a Bowmaster. Would you like to draw? And I was like, of course. And he was like, ping, ping. And I was like, I don't care. And then I was like, he was like, again, would you like to draw again? I don't care. Ping, ping. And then they asked me, they were like, are you really going to keep drawing? And I was like, I play Necropotents. Of course I'm going to keep drawing. I will get to removal for that orc. I've got it. I didn't get there.
You did get there.
I wish that is something that has kept me. Sounds so stupid, but I have thought about this quite a bit. And again, this is just goes back to like learning as a player. There was a moment there in the game where I stopped Cam's win right before it got to my turn, but I had to stop it with a pact, and I had enough to pay for pact, but I think I had like just enough to pay for pact. So he was going to win. I stopped it. He had the Basalt, he had Kinnan, and he had the Thrasios. And so we got into a little bit of a counter war. Brandon was out of counters, I know for certain. Cam had just the Flusterstorm left, I believe. So I cast, I think it was Force of Will on his Basalt. He tried to Flusterstorm my Force of Will, and then it ended up going through. Then out of nowhere, he like Noxious Revivaled his Flusterstorm back to the top of his deck, and he had enough mana to Thrasios activation plus recast it. So I was like, well, in response to the Noxious Revival, I couldn't stop. I should have. This was going to happen regardless. Like it was going to go back on top, because even if I had countered it with like a pact, he would still, it's going to go back on top. It wouldn't have mattered. And then the thing would have still got countered, but again, it just doesn't matter. So instead, I played a pact negation on the Basalt, and he was like, "How long you been sandbagging that?" Because I had it since my opening hand, and I told him I was like, I had it in my opening hand. He was like, "Nice, that was smart," and I was like, "Yeah." So it gets countered. His Flusterstorm goes up on top. Well, then it comes to my turn, and I'm staring at my hand, and I have a Windfall. Keep in mind, I have to pay 5 mana. I have a Windfall, and I have a Born Upon the Wind in hand. And I literally didn't have any of my wins. I had 40 cards in hand. Yeah, like I'm not joking. I drew so many cards. I had 40 cards in hand. I could have Windfalled and Born. And he looked at me before I even decided to do anything, and he said, "Don't be doing something funny, or else you won't be able to pay for that pact negation." And in my brain, I was like, I could get some free rocks, and I could use Angel's Grace and save myself. But I should have politicked in that moment and been like, "Hey, Cam, I can get you a ton of cards, but you have to let this go through, because if not, you're going to die to the attack after I die, because you have like no cards in hand." And then I think he probably would have been like, "Okay, fair." And if he needs to, he could protect my wheel. But I didn't do that. And instead I paid for pact, and I hoped to draw into something that could like stop the orc from murdering me. I did not get there. So, and I think about that all the time. I'm like, I should have politicked more. And so now I do that more. I sandbag a little more interaction. I try to politic when I get the opportunity to. I try to be a little more responsible with the way that I'm throwing cards around. And again, understanding like when is a good time to activate this thing. Like, if they're not going for the win, I'm not just going to counter a fish for no reason. Like, if it's going to totally put you out of the game, then maybe. But again, like I would rather somebody else do it. Let somebody else mental misstep. I don't want to, you do it. Like I'm fine. Because then eventually somebody's going to go consultation and be like, "No."
Right.
So yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit better, be more responsible, instead of, again, just casting spells willy-nilly into Ristics and into Mystics, and just being, literally going for the win. You're not going to get there. And then the person that you just cast all that stuff into their Ristic, they're going to win.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah. I don't know why I went off on that tangent.
But it happened.
It did happen. So what else do we want to talk about for this? Anything else?
I kind of feel like that's it. Unless, the only other thing I can think of, or if we missed, I think it kind of goes back to the community stuff.
Yeah.
If we post this and we start getting comments and people, seem interested, they'll probably let us know what we missed.
Yeah.
Or at least like getting a lot more open suggestions on things. Because right now, like this is a lot more of just like off the cuff. Like we're just trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
So
you got to start somewhere. Which I think, like I said, I think that the biggest impact that I hope to have is I just would like to get more eyeballs to cEDH.
Right.
At the end of the day, I don't care if it's, I'm not expecting us to just like double this community out of nowhere, but I would love, you look at some of these channels, like we love, again, like Play to Win's a good example, and Ian and these guys, and I listen to a ton of cEDH stuff. I listen to like the Win and In, I listen to Lamora's cards, I listen to the Mind Sculptors podcast like weekly. But again, you look at Play to Win's probably one of the biggest ones, and they're close to 100,000.
I think so.
But then you look at like Tolarian, and they're like what, almost or over $1 million.
Maybe, but I think that is also where, like we were kind of talking about earlier, of like trying to break some of the misconceptions and things like that, because not everyone that's playing EDH wants to do cEDH, or even the extension of that, which is probably TEDH, right? Yeah. And so like finding a way for us to kind of bridge that gap as much as possible, because like, you know, whether it's like Tolarian Academy or Command Quarters or whoever, not only have they been established for long enough that they have that kind of following, but they do tend to focus more on the casual side of things, or even maybe at times high power things. And I think that's where a lot of people in the format still are, you know, because cEDH is still kind of a branch of it, and our group or that population is not as big as the overall, you know, commander scene.
Yeah. And what I'm getting at with that is like, I'm not necessarily saying that I think that we are going to turn, you know, 100,000 into 1 million, but I would love it if we could say, okay, we're going to turn 100,000 into 150,000 or 200,000.
Right.
Like, you know, we are able to get some of that million to understand that like this is still a fun format. You know, it's not just Thoracle win. It's still fun. Like if you're somebody that wants to scratch some sort of like competitive itch maybe, or you're somebody that just you love to feel challenged in some way. Like, you know, you sat down at a table and there is skill to it. Like people will try to say, oh, there's no skill involved in that, you know, 1v1, there's a lot of skill there. There is a lot of skill in a 4-person format. Like, and nothing against 1v1 either. I think that that's fantastic, but again, it just does not scratch that itch for me. I love the political aspect of the game. I love these cards that break parity on the like, oh, when your opponent. That's fantastic. I wish honestly that there were more cards like that. I know that some people don't, but I would love for more stuff like that, because it adds another like level to the game. Like again, even something like a Dockside, it's a way for you to break parity on the fact that you have multiple opponents. You know what I mean? If you think about me drawing a card, like one card obviously is huge, but in order for me to make up the difference, like I start with, let's say 7 cards. My opponent starts with 21 cards. You know what I mean? It's not that they start with 7. It's like, there's 21 cards now that I have to kind of navigate around. So being able to break that parity and be like, okay, I now need to make up for this some way, somehow, again, and then you kind of go from there. There's a lot of skill to it. I would love for people to see that and say, wow, I would like to do this sometimes. Not like, oh, I never want to do that. It's like, I would like to do that sometimes. Or if they're not a fan of Thassa's Oracle, we go, hey, you don't have to do that. Here's this other fun thing you could do. You can do Heliod Ballista. You can do Bloodchief Ascension Mindcrank. You can do whatever thing it is over here that you want to do. And you just find a way to, you know, you can do Infinite Krinko bullshit and kill everybody with goblins. You can do Magda, you know.
Well, we're not doing Magda.
We're not.
We're not.
Somebody will.
Someone will.
But, yeah. But I mean, like that's what the hope is. I just hope that we can help grow not even just this, but cEDH as a whole. I would love to get more people in, because there's a lot of good Commander players out there that play casually, and I think they would have a fantastic home in cEDH.
And maybe something to kind of branch off that too, that I was just thinking of. Like, I think when most people watch like content online or things like that, they're going, man, I don't think I'd ever be as good as Ian or Dylan or Cam or the professor. We're just a couple of dudes from Kentucky, okay? So, like, we're just as regular as it gets at this game. Sometimes.
I sometimes question if the people we're playing with have a high school degree.
Just depends on what part of the state we're going
to. Yeah. You're like looking at a guy and he's missing like 10 teeth, and then he whips your ass with them. Jesus. But yeah, no, I do agree. But like I said, I think that I believe that we can help in our own little way. Even if it doesn't mean that we blow up to anything big, I still think that we can help grow it in some way. And if that happens, I'm cool with it, man. Because that just means more tournaments that we get to go play in, As long as Leo's with me, honestly, I think I'm fine.
Oh
Whatever.
God, I can't wait to get Leo. That's a goal. That's a channel goal. Get Leo on here as much as possible. They are in for a treat.
God. Well, you got anything else?
I don't. Not for today. Not on this one. So
okay. Yeah, I think that's good.